On this episode of the Icethetics podcast, we'll recap the Beijing Olympic jerseys. Dallas Kirkpatrick will join me to grade them all. But first, some news from jersey retirement nights to the All-Star uniforms in action, and a Canucks throwback is returning. Plus, a look at some great work from the Concept Showcase. The podcast starts now. Hey there, Chris here from Icethetics. Thank you for listening and for subscribing to the channel. Happy to have you. Coming up in a bit, Dallas Kirkpatrick from the Talkback crew will join me to talk Olympic jerseys. The 2022 games are now over. Congrats to Canada and Finland on their gold medals. It was a fun tournament to watch, and Dallas and I each had a lot to say on the jerseys. We talked back on February 13th, and I wanted to get this episode out before the Olympics ended, but time really got away from me over the last couple of weeks, so it'll have to act more as a recap. Anyway, we'll dig into all that later in the show. It's been a few weeks since my last so-called weekly episode, so I apologize for that, but I think we all knew it was inevitable. No way I could really keep up that pace while also delivering other types of videos on the channel. And of course, there's always life and work, sending the hobby to the back burner. So that said, it's probably more realistic to expect new episodes every 2 to 3 weeks instead, so I can keep other content coming. On that note, I recently released a new Design Decoded video. Been working on that for a few weeks. The NHL versus AHL episode. Lots of cool tidbits in there about AHL logos and how they compare with their NHL affiliates. I am planning a follow-up to that video as well, a conversation with people who have created AHL brands to get their insights on what we saw in that video. I'm thinking that will be the next episode of the podcast. But next up on my to-do list is editing that quick shift from Mike Gould, who you know from the Talkback. He's got an interesting jersey collection, and he's sharing some of his favorites with us. I'm also making progress on NHL Prototypes 4, lots of unused designs, including a bunch for the New York Islanders. Not the Fisherman era, as some of you have been asking for, but more recent designs, plus concept work from the Golden Knights, Buffalo Sabres, and some really early designs for the San Jose Sharks. Can't wait to share all of those and more. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel and have notifications turned on. That way you'll be the first to know when I have a new video out. And with that, let's get this episode started. We begin, as always, with loose threads and some jersey retirements at the end of January. Sergei Zubov's big night was fun to watch. The Stars took the pregame skate in Adidas versions of their 90s throwback jersey, closing the loop on the apparent leaked design that I mentioned in the last episode. The players also wore a special patch during the game to honor Zubov. That same night, Henrik Lundqvist had his number 30 retired by the Rangers. No special throwback jerseys there for obvious reasons, but everyone wore his number 30 during warm-ups. Then after the banner went up, there was a shoulder patch worn during the game. It temporarily replaced the one the team has been wearing all season in memory of Rod Gilbert, but only for that one night. The next jersey retirement is this week, February 24th in Nashville for Pekka Rinne. Then March 5th will be Rick Nash in Columbus and Mikko Koivu in Minnesota on March 13th. All right, let's talk All-Star jerseys. The NHL held its All-Star game in Vegas on February 5th. The matchups were interesting. Instead of the typical conference-based first round, it was left up to luck in true Vegas style. During the skills competition the night before, Golden Knight Jonathan Marchessault drew one of 3 cards to determine the Pacific Division's opponent.
Jonathan, can you please reach inside, take out that card, read nice and loud into that microphone who the Pacific Division is playing tomorrow in the All-Star game?
Metropolitan Division.
Metropolitan Division, give it up for the
So both games in the first round were East versus West, and because the Metro and Central Divisions won, it was also East versus West in the final. The Pacific and Central wore blue jerseys in the first round, which makes sense. The Western Conference is blue, Eastern Conference is red. It also meant the advancing teams, Metro in white, Central in blue, were already wearing clashing colors, but for some reason, both teams switched jerseys for the final. Metro in blue, Central in white. Not sure why, maybe just for fun. But if nothing else, it does create more sellable memorabilia, there being 2 separate game-worn jerseys for each player in the Central and Metro divisions. Anyway, the Metropolitan Division won, and for those keeping track, since this divisional All-Star format was introduced in 2016, the Pacific and Metro divisions have alternated wins each year. The Atlantic and Central have yet to win one. We'll see if that continues in South Florida next year. One cool feature of the All-Star uniforms was really easy to miss. On the back of each player's helmet was a decal, not just his team's logo, but a poker chip version of the logo. As part of the All-Star branding package, all 32 teams had a custom poker chip design, which you can see on screen now. Nothing earth-shattering here, but just another cool element that could only be done in Las Vegas. The Vancouver Canucks will resurrect their black throwback jersey once again. The team shared video and photos from practice on Super Bowl Sunday. They showed players and coaches breaking in their black gear, but not the jersey itself, which was last worn 2 years ago during the team's 50th anniversary season. The skate logo launched back in 1978. It was the team's primary logo, but it was used as a shoulder patch on the infamous Flying V jerseys. And if you're a geek for goalie gear, you're going to love what Thatcher Demko has in store. His homage to the great Kirk McLean was on display during that practice, and even McLean himself appreciated that. The Canucks will use these retro uniforms on Thursday, February 24th, the same night they'll wear specially designed warm-up jerseys to celebrate Black History Month. And that covers the news for this episode. By the way, if you missed the unveiling of the new Heritage Classic jerseys for Buffalo and Toronto, be sure to check out my latest Flash Report video. Up next, in depth on the Olympic jerseys with Dallas Kirkpatrick. Then he'll stick around for a little concept commentary. Okay, joining me now on the podcast is Dallas Kirkpatrick, because we're going to talk Olympic jerseys, and I can't really think of anybody better. And I want to give everyone a sense of why I think Dallas is the best person. Dallas, let's give everyone a quick rundown of your street cred when it comes to international hockey. How many different European teams have you designed jerseys for?
I would say, I don't even know the number exactly, but I think it's about 8 or 9 different teams. I did 6 this year. I know that. And 6 different teams. And that was home and aways for all of those, alternates for most of them. And then a couple teams I've actually been still, for this season doing event jerseys, like specifically, Glasgow in the EIHL. I did 3 or 4 event jerseys already for them, and there's 1 or 2 more upcoming still. So, yeah, I just kind of found a niche in about 2019 with European hockey, and that's a lot of my non-concept work has been based around the European leagues, specifically the EIHL in the British League and also the Czech Republic top league. I've done quite a number of teams in both of those leagues, and then a few others as well. So yeah, I do spend a lot more time looking at international jerseys and jerseys with sponsors on them. So,
well, do you have any favorites, any highlights that kind of stand out
that I've done?
Yeah,
probably my favorite would be this year I did jerseys for Pilsen, which we actually referenced in an earlier video. And they let me do exactly what I like to do with, where the design is rooted in. And that was, basically they sent me a yearbook style graphic where they had jerseys for the last 50 years. That team's got a lot of history. And we pulled little tiny elements out of, I would say, at least a dozen, if not more, different jerseys over their 50-year history. And they've been very much like, their branding's been consistent, but there's been little tweaks and different things here and there. And I just got to do that one exactly how I would do it. And I was really happy with how it turned out. So, and I guess I haven't really told anyone this yet, but I've been asked to do their jerseys next year. So I will be doing, that's the only one that I know for sure that I'm doing for next season. But
all right,
I've already got that one on the calendar. So that's the other thing too, I guess, with doing jerseys in Europe is most of the teams do new jerseys every year or every other year. And a big part of the reason why is because that's, in Europe, that's one of the biggest revenue models for a lot of those teams is they rebrand their jerseys every year or two and sell a bunch of jerseys. So they want to keep refreshing their look. And that's another part of the challenge with working with those teams is it has to be consistent, but also different. So yeah, there's a lot of more things to work around, I guess, which makes it kind of fun. So.
Yeah. And, I think that's kind of a neat model to think about, the idea that teams would be changing up jerseys every year. I don't know that we want to see that in the NHL, but it's certainly like for a fan, it gives you maybe a little more cred if you're wearing one of the older jerseys because, you could only bought it that year. Right. And so if you're wearing that older one, then you're a longtime fan.
Yeah, and I mean the sponsor thing is the other big hurdle too. And that's the question I get asked a lot is like, is it annoying working with the like all the sponsor logos and stuff? And I mean, it can be for sure, but I view it as a bit of a challenge. You're not given a blank canvas. You're given something that has, there's space that you can't mess with. And that's one thing that I always ask the teams that I work with is, some of them have said, well, you just design the jersey and we'll put the sponsor logos on after. And I much prefer to know exactly what's going where so that I can work around it. And you'll notice if you look at especially this year, the European jerseys I did this year, there's a lot of center stripe designs. And that's because that part of the jersey is largely left untouched. So there's a lot more room to be creative, with like a Montreal Canadiens style stripe across the center. And we did that in Glasgow and in many of our event jerseys for Glasgow as well, just because they have big sponsors top and bottom. So the hem stripes become a little bit more difficult. And I don't really like, breaking up a stripe with a big sponsor logo. So it's just a part of the challenge. And I've grown to kind of like it because it allows me to think outside the box a little bit. So
I think that's great. It's also not going to be long before, NHL jersey designers have to wrap their heads around that too, I'm sure. So we're already going to get a little bit of a taste of that next season, but that's for another time. For right now, we are going to talk about the Olympic jerseys. Back in episode 3 of the Talkback, you and Justin and I spent a little time on a few of the Olympic jerseys that had been released at that point, and you weren't exactly in love with them, particularly Canada. So here's what I want to ask. Now that you've seen your country in action a little bit, wearing each jersey at least once, the black, the red, the white, has your opinion changed on any of them?
Not really. I don't hate them. I don't necessarily think that the black and red looks bad as just a jersey. I just don't think it's Canada. And that's the part that bothers me the most. Like I was thinking about this before we started recording, and to me, and I know that this isn't really true because there's new designs for every team, every Olympics for the most part, except you, Sweden, but we'll talk about that. But even though this isn't really the case, I sort of view the Olympics as like almost like original 6 teams. Like it should be more traditional, and it should be, rooted in what you've done to a larger degree, maybe, especially with, the big hockey countries like Canada and Russia and the States and Sweden and Finland. Like, I just feel like it, there should be a little more tradition there. And I just don't, that red jersey specifically is the one that bothers me the most because it's red and black, not red and white. And I do think the black equipment belongs because that's been a part of it forever, but they're not like terrible. I mean, if you took the red jersey and made the black parts white, it would be not my perfect jersey, but it would be 1,000 times better. So the design itself is fine, but the color thing bugs me.
Well, now I'm kind of with you on the idea of tradition, and that maybe Olympic teams should be treated as kind of the way that we think of Original 6 in the NHL. But on the other hand, these events are so, they're rare. It's every 4 years, and for some fans it'll feel longer for stretches when there are no NHL players involved because they may not be paying attention. And at first, I was kind of with you in terms of Canada should be red and white, and why is there so much black in the red jersey? And then there was something that changed for me when I started watching some of the games. I saw the whole field of all the teams together. Out of the 13 countries that are participating in hockey in Beijing, more than half are wearing red and white in some form. And only 2 countries don't have red at all. That's Finland and Sweden that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. Strictly speaking, Latvia doesn't have red per se, but their burgundy is kind of in the red family. I think they officially call it carmine, but it reminds me of the burgundy of the Avalanche. So it's not totally red. But the point is, there is a lot of red and white. So how do you stand out? How do you make sure that when you glance at the TV, it's Canada playing and not Switzerland or ROC or Czech Republic or Denmark? I assume that the designers at Nike had this in mind while they're working on these jerseys for Canada, because they're working for, on jerseys for all the countries, because they do stand out. It may not be in the way you want them to stand out, but they may not be traditionally Canadian, but they really do stand out.
Yeah, I think you're always with red and blue in any league anywhere, you're going to find that those are the 2 dominant colors, I think. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I've definitely thought of as well. And I'm a little bit selfish because I want Canada's jerseys to be perfect above anything else. So I'm, in the case of Canada, I'm blocking out everybody else. This is just a Canada problem.
Yeah, sure, exactly. Yeah.
But certainly that's, I totally agree. And I do think, and again, being a little bit selfish towards, my country, I would say if I was looking at the other teams that are predominantly red, I think Switzerland would look good with red pants. I don't know if there's a reason that you need the black equipment with them. I just think it's, again, I know I'm jaded, but Canada's had the black pants forever. I think there was maybe one tournament where they had red and blue for some reason, but yeah, I think they would look at, if they did the all red thing, I think it would work. Now I know Russia does that as well, but typically Russia's got a lot more blue in there. Now that's not the case this year. And who knows what it's going to be 4 years from now, but that would kind of be my solution there. But of course, like I said, I'm very jaded, and I don't love the black thirds either. It seems like there always needs to be one. I'm kind of indifferent. Like I would just as soon not and just go with 2 jerseys for Canada. There's not enough games to warrant 3 jerseys in my opinion. That said, if there has to be a black third, then there has to be a black third, but I'm looking mostly at the red and the white jerseys, and the white jersey I think is Canada's best one this year, just because it falls with, my philosophy of the red and white jersey and the black equipment. I don't think it's perfect either, but of the 3, that would be my favorite. And like I said, if the black was white on the red, that would be it would be a huge step forward. Not exactly what I would do, but much closer. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's shift gears now south to my neck of the woods in the U.S. and talk about Team USA a bit. Because the one thing for me, you mentioned when you're talking about Team Canada, the third jersey. Do you really need it? I know it's like supposed to be it's a lighter blue. It's kind of maybe more of a royal blue than the navy blue of the dark jersey. But to be honest, just at a glance, I have a hard time telling them apart. It's just not different enough. I mean, the only way I notice it is the lack of the red stripe across the center. So, I know the US is supposed to be blue. That's cool. But maybe there was a different crest treatment or something else they could have done. That's the only nitpick I have. Otherwise, I like the USA jerseys. I like how they came out. I'm curious if you've had any change of opinion after you've seen them now on the ice.
Yeah, again, not really. I mean, one thing I'll say about that the US has done for the last, didn't look, but probably 20 plus years, maybe more, is I like the white helmets with the navy jerseys. I don't know. It stands out to me as a very US at the Olympics thing. So that I like. I don't love them, to be honest. And part of the reason, and I know I'm definitely would classify myself as a traditionalist, but I just, there's so many good US jerseys, and so many places you could pull from that they're not horrible. They're not great. Again, I would say that the white is my favorite of the 3. I like the contrast and stuff there. I don't really love the non-matching striping, like with the red on the bottom and the blue on the top. It's not horrible, but it's not what I would do. So yeah. I'm kind of a mixed bag with the US ones. They're far from the worst jerseys there, but it's, again, just like with Canada, it feels like a missed opportunity to me. So
yeah. So we're going to get into kind of going country by country, but before we do that, kind of as a jumping off point, I wanted to see if you had a favorite matchup so far. And I'll start. And for me, it was Finland and Latvia. Finland's blue against Latvia's kind of carmine color. That was just beautiful. And I think for me, part of it is that most of the games have tended to look the same because there is so much red and white, which is just, that's going to happen in Olympic games. But, that one had no red in it, really. And it was a refreshing look. And it was just really cool. The kind of two-tone blue in Finland, that carmine burgundy color for Latvia. And I love the striping. I love the colors, all of it. It was just a great looking game for me. And I'm not usually a fan of kind of the muted colors, but it really worked, I think, in that game. I'm curious if you had a pairing that you really enjoyed watching.
Yeah, I think for me, the best matchup we've had, and that was, that one would certainly be up there as well. The other one would be from today, actually, from Finland and Sweden. And that would be Finland's darks, their navy, and Sweden's yellows. One thing that most of the jersey community agrees on is we like to see the color games where there's no whites. I love white jerseys. By the way, I'm one of these people that thinks that white should be the home jersey. But that aside, I think seeing those color on color matchups, they really stand out. And especially here, you have probably the best 2 jerseys at the Olympics, in my opinion. They're certainly both up there. And the contrast of the 2, and the rivalry there as well. That to me, that was the one that stood out.
Yeah, there's definitely a pattern there with Finland too. So going from there, what I want to do is just kind of run through all 13 countries with some kind of structure. So we'll do grading, A through F, along with reasons why. But let's start by doing a quick rewind to our home countries. We'll start with Canada and the US. We've already said our piece about, the jerseys, but we can just sum them up with a grade, I think, real quick. And for me, Canada, I think it stands out in a kind of a crowded field of red and white. And, even though it's not, in a sense, traditional, it definitely, I like jerseys that stand out. I like when teams try to be different from everyone else. And so I give Canada an A.
I'm going to be a little more harsh just because I have to. I'm thinking probably a C or a C plus, maybe we'll call it. Yeah, like I said, they're far from the worst jerseys of the tournament. I'd say the same thing about the States, but I have very strong opinions when it comes to both Canadian and American jerseys in international competition, and this just missed it a lot for me. Aside from the color thing, because I harp on that a lot, this isn't my favorite version of the Maple Leaf crest either. Specifically, what's going on in the middle. I think if they just had the outline and not those stripes that kind of all meet in the center, it just seems off to me. So it's just not my favorite, but they're okay. So I'll say C plus for that one.
All right, C plus. What about the States? What grade do you give them?
Probably C minus. They're just below Canada's, I would say, for me. And grading the white on its own, maybe a little higher grade, but as the group as a whole, like you brought up, the third seems out of place. The navy one is a whole lot of navy with a whole lot of nothing else. So I would say C minus for that one.
I was going to say, for me too, that is where the details kind of get lost, especially on the blue jerseys. I think that the white one looks great. There's a lot of nice contrast in that and use of color. I think my grading scale may be a little kinder because I'm going to give the US a B on those. But again, I still do think on the blue, the two shades of blue that are being used on both, the navy jersey as well as the alternate, there's not enough of a difference. And so for me, like I said, the details just get a little lost.
Yeah, it feels very much like with both the Canada. Well, like I said, Canada's probably always going to have that alternate black, which I don't love, but it's probably going to be there. But in the case of the States, it feels like this is a third for third's sake.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. Let's go to the host country, China. I'm going to give them a C. I think it's a little average. There are cool details in the chest stripe, but they're just a little too subtle. I think they could have brought some of that out and drawn a little more attention to it.
Yeah, and I kind of like them. These turned out better than I expected. I think the picture that everybody wants to see and that helps here is the goalie, the women's goalie with the dragon pads. Everybody that makes it look pretty cool. And again, here's a scenario where I would say the whites are better. I like those jerseys. I think these guys, I would give them a B.
Yeah, I could see that. And yeah, I think her name is Zhao Zheying, but that set of pads is just the coolest thing, I think, at the Olympics right now.
And it's really neat to see what, obviously these are very traditional style jerseys. There's really, it's for the most part two colors or three colors and, the word China across it. There's not a whole lot of extra going on. And being a traditionalist, I like that, but seeing that paired with those crazy dragon pads, it stands out. And I feel like when we talk about this 4 years from now, we're probably going to reference that again. So
I think you're right. And, I think if I really think about it, if I'm really including her goalie pads, I think maybe I have to bump my grade up, but
yeah.
So let's just keep going in alphabetical order. Czech Republic. And by the way, you do work there. You've done work, obviously, for teams in the Czech Republic. I'm curious. I've been reading things about whether they want to be called the Czech Republic or Czechia. Do you have any insights about that and why that shorter name is being pushed in some places?
I haven't really come across that. It's something that it's like you said, I've worked with 3 different teams in the Czech Extra League now. And which is a decent portion of that league. And I've talked to other teams in there as well. I'm a little bit more familiar with what's going on there. And that's not something I really came across. I've heard more about that since the Olympics started than before. So one thing that is talked about, and it seems like there's very strong opinions on, is the crest logo, though. You cannot use the smaller secondary version of the crest because it's offensive to half the country, I guess. So I was told very quickly about that one. So
Interesting, because I remember that from the World Cup of Hockey in 2016, where originally, we did see the just the simplified version.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is too, I looked specifically into this because when I actually, and we might talk about my Olympic concepts in a little bit here too, but when I did my Czech concept this year, I did the secondary version, which according to the Olympic rules is legal. According to the Czech Republic's rules is not. So that's, there's an important distinction there. It does meet the Olympic code, but not the country's code. So, and based on, just what I've seen on Twitter response and stuff like that, it seems like people in the Czech Republic have a very strong opinion about that. So as far as this crest logo goes, I think we're going to see this sticking around. I don't think we're going to see a jersey without that for some time.
Yeah, it's a little detailed, but I mean, it has strong meaning to the country, so it makes sense, and I wouldn't have anything bad to say about that. What would your overall grade be for the jerseys?
Being picky, I'm going to say B-, and I'll tell you exactly where the minus comes from, and this is going to come up on other jerseys as well. That diamond pattern on the shoulders, it's really strong on the white. If you look at the two jerseys side by side, it's a very subtle thing on the white jersey, and it's like dark gray on the red. So this is another instance where I would certainly take the white jersey over the red, but I do like the design overall. Again, with my Czech concept, it actually is very similar to this in terms of the striping pattern. I do like the jerseys. The shoulders on the dark is what brings it down for me.
Yeah, I'm really with you, and I give them a C as well, because for me, the other thing is the gold standard for Czech hockey jerseys was Sochi. Again, I'm talking about 2014.
Oh yeah,
it was the way that the way that the flag is just sort of draped over the jersey in a way. It was just like it was too perfect. It really stood out as that's a Czech jersey for me. But again, not knowing anything about how Czech people feel about different jersey designs, and obviously that crest is important to them. But yeah, I'm with you too on the shoulders, where the effect on the red isn't as bad, but yeah, when you see it on the white and it just effectively makes it gray. I think that's kind of a bit of a miss, maybe a little too much. They could have scaled it back a bit.
Where it stands out too is with the release of the Olympic jerseys this year, Nike has that new center collar thing going on, and it almost looks rubberized or something. I haven't seen it in person, so I'm kind of guessing, but it is bright white on the Czech jersey, whereas it makes the shoulders look really dirty almost. So that's the one glaring issue I see with those. And just talking about unique Czech jerseys, the first one that I think of, and maybe it's probably not the best, definitely doesn't fall into the traditional. It wouldn't have the traditional banner, but the 98 ones that actually that was an Eric Bottomer jersey. That had the big check across the back.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yep.
That's the first thing I think of, because they did really well that year too. So
yeah, no, that's true. That was a good one. That one stood out, I think, in a way that, these just don't. I mean, I get the crest and the importance of keeping it the way it is. You're not messing with that. Kind of, we see the same thing with Sweden, which we'll get to in a minute, but I don't know. It's just the rest of the jersey for me, I don't know. It doesn't do enough. But one thing I do like about it is that whether I think they're wearing their white or red jerseys, they have blue helmets, which I just like that kind of difference. You see the same thing, of course, with the Montreal Canadiens. All right. So that's the Czech. We'll jump to Denmark next. I give this one a C as a set. I know I'm giving a lot of average grades right now, but they'll get better in a minute. For this one, though, the lion design is really cool, but it just gets lost in the chest stripe for me. But I don't have a lot to compare it to, because I don't think Denmark has been in any of the last few Olympics that I could recall. But I do like the contrasting shoulder colors, at least, and that it's kind of a cleaner look than we saw with the Czech Republic.
Yeah, and I funny thing about Denmark too, like when I did my Olympic concept series, I went back and looked, especially for the ones that I was less familiar with teams like Denmark, and you're hard pressed to find a Denmark international jersey on Google Images. Like there's not that many of them out there. So for that reason, I think I would be a little harsh here. I'm going to say C-, because I feel like when you don't have that history to live up to, you can do something a little different, and I feel like this is pretty safe. This is kind of like what you'd expect, not having anything to compare it to. One thing that stands out, I think, is the black numbers. They have the black numbers on the back and on the shoulders of the reds. Yeah, I was going to say that. Yep. Talking about, making the black, white, red team stand out a little bit. I think that that's a good thing. But like you said, the center stripe is high, and it's, that there's a lot going on with that lion logo. So I think it would probably be better without, or perhaps as a hem stripe or something. So there's definitely things to change there, but just, kind of just boring, I think, for a team that could afford to do something a little crazier, or not, doesn't have to be crazier, but they could be unique. They could stand out, and it seems like chose not to. So
what about Finland? How do you grade them?
High. I'll just say, because they're different than any other Finnish jersey, and they're still rated so high, I'm going to give them a solid A. Big fan of these jerseys. I think the two-tone blue is something that, and with these shades anyway, is kind of unique. Using that crest logo instead of the whole Suomi thing. I don't know if I'm probably not saying that right, but they chose to do something different, and it came across really well. And I haven't really seen a negative word spoken about these jerseys anywhere. So yeah, I would rate them very highly.
Same. I give them an A. Absolutely one of the best sets of the tournament. And, even though, I'm not really a fan of the way the US used two shades of blue, I like it. It looks really good here for Finland, and especially with that gold, lion crest, as opposed to, a word mark that we've seen in the past from them. But I'm a huge fan of Finland as well.
The only thing that bothers me about Finland is that they were the first jerseys to come out, so they set the bar really high, and then unfortunately, it wasn't really met. In my opinion.
Not everybody else seemed to live up to it. Yeah, Germany. What's your grade there?
I like these. I always seem to like the German jerseys. I think the color, it looks like 90s Canucks colors, and that combination stands out, especially like we've talked about with the lots of red and blues. This is, it stands out. Again, not super into that shoulder pattern, especially in this case, the yellow version. I think it looks better on the black. But I do like these. I would give these probably an A-. They could be improved, but they're pretty good.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's pretty solid. I'm giving it a B, but I like the lack of white in the black jersey. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't really love the shoulders. Although, if you really take a close look at them, and I'll show them on screen, is that we're seeing these little shoulder patterns on each jersey, not on every jersey, but on different teams, but they're not the same. So each team kind of has its own pattern.
Yeah, they're just, and I'm cool with the pattern. They're just strong. They're a little in your face. I think that they could have done with a little more subtlety, but I do like these jerseys. They look good, and Germany always looks good.
Yeah, a little goes a long way sometimes, and subtle's good. How about Japan? What's your grade there?
They get points for uniqueness for sure. If you were to guess what Japan's jerseys were going to look like before seeing these, I don't think anybody would have said would have came up with this. So I do like that part of it. The jerseys themselves, I'm going to just take the easy way out and say I'll give it a B-. They're I like how unique they are, and especially the full uniform with the socks. They definitely stand out. So
yeah, exactly. And for me, standing out is usually a way to get your grade higher. And so for me, I give Japan an A, because I do like that kind of cascading bars motif that they're using on the chest. They use on the sleeves and on the socks. It really looks good on the socks. I don't know the significance of it, to be honest, but I like the repeated use. I think it's a really distinct look.
Yeah, I was trying to figure it out too, and I'm just totally guessing here, but I'm wondering if it's like a rising sun, but in like 8-bit version or something. Okay, so that's kind of what I took away. I'm like, it's like like an 80s version of like a rising sun where you can't do gradients or something like that. So
yeah, that's an interesting interpretation. I like that. We'll go with that.
I do, and this is one of those cases where it's Japan, it's ice hockey Olympics. They did what I think Denmark should have done, and done something a little bit off the board. So for that reason, I think they're a better jersey than what Denmark came out with.
Let's go to Latvia, where I give them an A. High marks if only because it's a unique color. I pointed out that it's in the red family, but when you watch a game, you're not going to confuse it with one of the red teams. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they may be the only team that really owns a color that nobody else uses the same color they do.
Mm-hmm. Being that I gave Finland the A-, I think I will I give them the A. I'll give Latvia the A-, comparing them to Finland, if I had to pick one, it'd be Finland, but these are awesome jerseys. Like with some of the other teams, I think the negative I would point out here on the darks is that the white shoulder blotches, whatever you call those, where the corners of the shoulder, I think it looks a lot cleaner on the white version. Guess I'm seeing a theme here where I like the whites better. It seems to be the case, but you know, they're strong. Like you said, that they're very unique with the colors. I do like the center stripe here. There's not a whole lot to complain about, so they're definitely up there. Number 3 for me overall.
Yeah, they're a great one. So okay, Latvia. What's next? ROC. So for me, D. You know, not much to say here. Russia was banned from the Olympics, so their uniforms couldn't really use any, you know, of the classic Russian iconography that we've seen in past jerseys. It looks generic, and there's a reason for that. Yeah, I would agree, D, with that one. There's not much else to say there. I guess I would say they are slightly better than the OAR jerseys that we saw last time around. But yeah, I don't know really what else to say. If you take the logo off of them, they seem kind of classic, and I guess is the case I would make. And they, you know, they're boring, but they're, you know, it's one of those big name teams that should have, you know, some tradition, I think. So for that reason, I would say, you know, the jerseys are okay. That logo, especially on the red, looks weird. So yeah, D for me. Yep. Okay. Let's move on to Slovakia.
It's a solid B+ for me. I like them. I did prefer the navy version here, and I know that it makes it closer to the US jerseys for sure, but the navy version of this from I think it was 14 probably was a little better. Just I think the colors are I like the color combination a little more, but definitely nice jerseys.
Yeah, I mean I personally love the bright blue on their jerseys, but you know, and the red for that matter. But there was something about it that was a little lacking. Like it just was missing some personality for me. So I went back and looked at what they did in Sochi in 2014, because that was, again, one where I think we can both agree that just across the board, they were better. And I really loved what they did in 2014. It was the little pinstripes that you see across the jerseys. But they weren't just pinstripes. If you look up really close, if I recall right, it's the words to the Slovak national anthem. I think that was just really a cool touch and very personalized to that country. But so, you know, overall, I'm going to give them a B. I like the colors, but I just felt like it was missing a bit of personality for me.
Yeah, this seems like they went a very traditional, what you'd call traditional for Slovakia, which again I'm a fan of, so that probably plays a part. But they're nice jerseys for sure. Right,
hard to complain. Sweden is next. Speaking of safe, but yeah, I'm going to say A. They don't let Nike screw with their jerseys, and you know it makes them, you know, to go back to your original 6 comparison, it makes them the Montreal Canadiens of international play in my mind. They always wear the same jerseys because they're perfect, and you recognize them instantly. They are Sweden.
Yeah, and for that reason, it's A+ for me. They're my number 1, just because and I know that might be the boring answer to some people, but they're doing exactly what they should do, in my opinion. And yeah, they make little tweaks every year, but to the average person, they wouldn't even know. So to me, that's the mark of a strong brand, or country in this case. But yeah, they look awesome, and they make for good matchups because, you know, those yellow jerseys especially, you're not going to see anything that comes even close to that. So paired with anybody else in the tournament, they stand out.
Yeah, and so far, from my count, from the games we've seen up to this point, they've only worn the blue one time, and it was in the women's tournament. The 3 opening games that Sweden played, they wore yellow every time. And it's just one of those jerseys that, again, I know it's traditional, and I haven't been scoring highly for tradition, but it also stands out in a way that nobody else does. Nobody else has that bright yellow jersey with the 3 blue crowns. I mean, it's amazing to me. Last one is Switzerland.
I'm not going to be too kind here. D+.
Yeah.
They're better than the ROC jerseys, I'll say that. But yeah. and I'm always disappointed by these types of jerseys from Switzerland, because I loved their 2014 jerseys, especially the white ones. They were so simple and so classic, and I compare everything to that now. And for some reason, to me, the big issue here, the shield outline of the crest, it just makes it feel very, like, for lack of a better term, clip arty to me or something. It seems very cheap. And when they did the off center cross with the center stripe in 2014, I loved those jerseys again, especially the white one. But Yeah,
I was going to say the same thing. That 2014 one stands out. But yeah, I hear what you mean. I'm not going to be as harsh on them because I like a little bit of what they've done. I like the red stripe. I like the kind of darker red on the red jersey. Although I wonder if it would look better with the white stripe. But I'm giving them a B. It's okay. But I just put it a little bit above a C, I guess, is where I landed.
And I think, if I'm not wrong, I mentioned this was a U.S. exclusive thing, and I'm just looking at pictures here. I think they're wearing the white helmets with the red jerseys too.
Yes. In fact, I was looking back in the women's tournament, I didn't see any red helmets at all. So I think they're wearing white across the board.
Oh, okay.
If that's accurate, but from what I've seen so far, I think they're just always. So it's funny if you look at them in their red jersey, they have the red jersey, black pants, white helmets.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Interesting combination. All right. Well, before we wrap up, is there anything else you would like to say on Olympic jerseys? I think we've spent a lot of everyone's time on this subject, but I think we've gone really in depth as promised.
Yeah, I think you and I have mentioned this a couple times already, but for me, 2014 is the year that set the bar. And this is, like I said at the top, that this is not when we're poking holes in these jerseys, this isn't, us saying that Nike does bad jerseys, because those were all Nike jerseys too. Mm-hmm. I think what I've really noticed, I think I was saying this to you offline before, was in the last two Olympics, so 18 and 22, it seems like they've really been trying to Nike-ify, find that thing that makes them stand out. Like this year, it's the numbers are all the same. There's those shoulder patterns, albeit different, but those shoulder patterns we were talking about, that new front of the collar. It seems like they're trying different things, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but 2014 just seems to be the year that they're going to get compared to, at least for me. That for many of these teams, that was their best year in my opinion. So that's always going to be the one that I compare it to. So anything short of that seems like a missed opportunity, I guess, because I know how good it can be.
All right, well put, Dallas. And that is going to wrap up the main topic for this episode of the podcast. But stick around in just a minute. We're going to jump into concept commentary, and Dallas is going to stick with us for that as well. All right, good chat, Dallas, on the Olympic jerseys, but we're going to wrap up this episode with concept commentary, as usual. I wanted to start with one that I thought was really worth highlighting, is called Vancouver Foursome from Nick Burton. He's done a ton of concepts. We're pretty much seeing him on a monthly basis for the last couple of years. This one was posted on February 1st, by the way, part of Nick's ongoing series where he's re-envisioning the NHL as a four-jersey league, which may become real soon enough if the reverse retro keeps coming back. But this Canucks one here that he did is just great for me. This modern stick and rink logo really looks sharp on the chest. The V's on the sleeves are a nice nod to the team's original jerseys from 1970. And it's even carried over to the black skate jersey, the third jersey. But the fourth one is one I just love. Not just for the Millionaire's crest, but for the green flannel sleeves. I could so see that here in Seattle if Vancouver doesn't want it. It's just a fun jersey effect. But the only nitpick I might have is the blue that's used on the home and road designs. I kind of prefer a lighter royal blue for the Canucks, and the darker one works well on the fourth jersey for sure, but I like a bright blue with the green for their main jerseys. Dallas, what about your concept pick?
I'm going to talk specifically about an artist rather than a specific concept, but we'll talk about a few. And I need to talk about a buddy of mine, Orion Taylor. When I think about the active concept artists that are around right now, when I think about consistency, he's probably the first person I think of. And he's obviously kind of made his mark with the templates lately. A lot of people, Illustrator guys, are using his templates now.
I'm seeing a ton of those come in all the time. That's so true.
Yeah. So he's definitely making his mark. And I just, he's one of those few concept artists that almost never puts anything bad or that I disagree with out. And I've actually, I'm thinking about this a little more. I'm learning to do some more things because of his concepts. And specifically one of those things is I noticed a pattern with a lot of his recent concepts is he uses a lot more color in the sleeves of the white jerseys. If you look at the Robo Penguin concept that he did recently, notice that the sleeves are black and yellow predominantly. They look like they're off of the dark version of the jersey. And he does that often. And I've started doing that, not stealing that, the striping patterns, but that idea of the no white and the or adding some more color to the white jerseys. It really stands out, and I think it looks good. And the 3 jerseys that I'll talk about, I guess, for a second are just his latest 3 on Icethetics: the Kings back to the original color jerseys, the Robo Penguin one I just mentioned, and the Columbus jerseys. Now, I love all 3 of these concepts. The Columbus one is very unique. It's very different than anything else we've seen. I like it specifically because if I was in charge of Columbus, one thing I would do is make them not the less rangery, I suppose. And this really achieves that. I'm a big fan of the Canon logo as well. So, I feel like if I wasn't a designer myself and I went to somebody and said, okay, I want, less or no red, I want the Canon jersey, and I want it to look good, and, that was the criteria, and this came back to me, I would jump all over it. So, specifically, again, the white. I think it just looks really good here, and the extra color certainly doesn't hurt. And the other 2 I mentioned, the Kings and the Penguins ones, say what you want about the Robo Penguin. I don't know if it's the best choice to go back to full time, but those are both excellent looking jerseys. I can't think of anything I would change. And the Kings one too. I mean, I always struggle making Kings concepts. My latest concept is a Kings one that's not even on Icethetics yet. And outside of the original 6, that's probably my least team that I've attempted to do something for, because I have a really tough time with it. And then here comes Orion and just does it just about perfect. So yeah, I think Orion's one of those guys who we're going to be seeing a lot more of, on the pro scene or the actual jerseys and stuff. Another, instance of doing those sleeves that I mentioned was the Dallas Stars one that he did a while back last year. And same thing there. It just looks, it looks so good. It's something unique, and he's definitely got a style, and it works for me. So
100% true. Like, I totally agree. Between him and Nick Burton, who we talked about a little while ago, like, these guys don't miss. They have such a great sense of style when it comes to creating great hockey jerseys. And obviously I would include you as well in the list, Dallas, but since you're here, it might be awkward to talk about you like that.
That's okay. I'll take it where I can get it.
Yeah. All right. So what I also like to do in the concept commentary section is show off a concept, an unpublished concept, something that hasn't shown up on the site or may not show up. And since you're here, I'd like to talk with you about the rest of your Olympic set. So if we look back, if we go back to December, really, is when you, I think, created all of these, or most of them at least. December 11th was your first one for Canada. And, we've discussed before your love of the Summit Series jersey, and especially now for the 50th anniversary, it would have been cool to see that make a comeback at the Olympics. That was part of that design. Your Team USA came a week later. Those looked great. They're, obviously inspired by the style you like, the 1960 design. And then another week after that, we took a look at your Scandinavian team designs. You had some for Finland, Sweden, and Denmark, and those all looked great. So we've seen those, but what I want to get into a little bit here is the other designs. You did the whole field, at least on the men's side, so we can talk about some of the other teams that we didn't get to see on the concept showcase, but for listening to this podcast or watching it here on YouTube, you'll get a chance to see all this stuff for the first time. Dallas, I'd like to guide us through this. So the first one I would like you to talk a little bit about is Switzerland. In the last segment, we did talk a little bit about your love of the Sochi era jerseys.
I mean, I said it in my in my comments when I posted this on both my Instagram and Twitter, but it's basically a ripoff of those jerseys, because I love them. Like, they're just so, that 2014 set was just about perfect. Maybe in an effort to just add some uniqueness, I put the numbers in the sleeves. So that's something that was a little bit different. Now, I didn't really think about this until after, and I might change this if I was to redo them. But I did get some heat for the dark jersey, because right away everyone said the reason they don't do that is because it's the Red Cross logo. Mm-hmm. When you do the white. And that never even crossed my mind when I was doing it. I just thought, the white jersey's perfect, then you flip it and you got the good red one. So that never really came across. That wasn't what my intention was, but seeing that now, I get it. So for that reason, we might go with a two-tone red, kind of like what China's reds look like this year. Yeah, but not a whole lot to say there. It was really, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type mindset with that one.
Let's look next at your ROC design, which is a little definitely more outside the box than what we saw, what we're seeing now at the Olympics.
Yeah, I think the big thing here is it's definitely more Russian. It's like colors wise, it's based on the 2014 for the most part. I think that those colors stand out a little bit more than just solid red. And the gold in there, that's kind of where that comes from as well. Now, knowing that we couldn't do, and this might have even not passed. I know that one of the rules was you can't say Russia anywhere, and you can't, I don't know what they all were, but essentially this might not have flown because it's a little bit too Team Russia, but I was ignoring that. So I think the gold makes it stand out a little bit. I did include that ultra boring ROC logo in the top corner, but I didn't want that to be on the crest like it is in real life. So just trying to do something a little different for a team that we, I think if I would have done a Russian jersey, I could have been pretty creative with that and done something a lot more fun, but I was trying to be somewhat realistic in the fact that wasn't going to happen this year. So
Sure. What about Germany? Germany kind of stands out to me because it looks a bit more like maybe like a soccer jersey.
Yeah, and that was a comment I got a lot. And I'll say this, I guess, just relating it back to what I've done in the real world. I a little bit ripped this off for myself. This is the pattern that I used for Oscillary Trinek on their jerseys this year in the Czech Extra League. So their jerseys are red and white. So it's not the exact same, but that diamond gradient pattern, that's where that's from. So I did reuse that. My thought process here was, just do something a little different. Germany, now they're not one of those fringe teams necessarily like a Denmark or a Japan, but they're also not one of the big teams that you expect to be right in the mix every year. So for that reason, I thought, let's just be a little unique here. The colors are a little different. Yeah, that was really my only thought there, was just do something that's kind of fun and interesting. And this was sort of one of those, love it or hate it concepts. And I got both of those. So
yeah. No, I like it. Again, like I said, I like the ones that really tend to stand out. And I think this would. I think the lack of any striping, the white might get kind of washed out on TV. Same with the black, the gradient might disappear a little bit. But I like the idea of trying to go down a unique path. All right. Well, these unpublished concepts probably won't get posted to the showcase, just given the volume of what I have from Dallas that still needs to get shared at some point. So you can consider this an exclusive to the podcast. And of course, if you follow Dallas on Twitter, you'll surely see them there along with any new designs he does. All right, Dallas, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but thank you again for talking Olympic jerseys with me. Hope we can do it again 4 years from now.
Yes, thanks for having me on, and hopefully, I hope I wasn't too harsh in my grading, but I do have strong opinions with these, especially when it comes to the big countries. So
yeah, and well earned, I would say too. You've done a lot of really good work. All right, I think that does it for episode 4. Again, thank you for listening in. I appreciate you making it all the way to the end. I know Dallas and I talked for quite some time here. If you have any suggestions for future topics on the podcast, let me know in the comments, or you can find me on Twitter at Icethetics. And as you go, remember to like this video if you haven't yet. That's all for now. See you next time.